Well, good morning, everyone. I think it is 9:40 and time for us to begin. Can y'all hear me okay? Chris, I think we need some more sound for the folks in the back. Can you hear back there? Are we good? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Hello to all of you who are here in the chapel, and hello to everyone who is tuning in online. It is great to have all of you with us this morning. For those who are online, if you have comments or questions you would like to share, the way you can do that is in the comment section on the Facebook live stream, and I'll be monitoring those and will do my best to ask your questions. So put those in the Facebook chat. This is week 10 in our Fall Adult Ed series on the great ends of the church. And the great ends of the church are these 6 big goals for the church, 6 big reasons for the church's existence, the 6 big things the church is supposed to be doing. So we started off by talking about the proclamation of the gospel for the salvation of humankind. Then we discussed the shelter, nurture, and spiritual fellowship of the children of God, the maintenance of divine worship, the preservation of the truth, and then last week we began our discussion of the promotion of social righteousness. The promotion of social righteousness. And last week, the Reverend Guy Dunham gave us an excellent overview of the biblical mandate to structure our relationships within society in a way that is righteous and loving and just, and especially to promote compassion and justice for those within society who are most marginalized, for those who are oppressed. So if you missed that introduction to the promotion of social righteousness, the recording is online, and I would encourage you to check that out. So as has been our pattern in this class, for each of these big 6 ends of the church, we've spent the first week talking about what it is, what does it mean, and then the second week getting practical and talking about how do we do it, how are we trying to live it out here at First Pres. So today we are going to hear from 2 exciting presenters who are leaders in our congregation helping us to promote social righteousness. First, we are going to hear from Jennifer Hunter, who is the co-chair of the Racial Justice Committee. And then next we'll hear from Elizabeth Lauer, who is the director of the Caring Ministry. So I'll turn it over to Jen, who will tell us about racial justice work here at FPC.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jennifer Hunter, and I am the co-chair of our Racial Justice Committee. I'm here to give you an overview of what we have been doing over the past couple of years. But before I go any further, I would like to thank Sue Dunham for sharing her research on this history. Thank you, Sue. It is important that you understand our history in order to see what we're doing today. In 1965, we had the unique experience of merging with a once thriving but then struggling African American congregation, and that was Faith Presbyterian Church. This happened in the middle of the civil rights movement here in York. December 24th, 1965, to be exact, was the first service with the combined churches. Reverend Douglas Parks had his work cut out for him because not everyone was happy about this merger. In 1982, the Reverend Blair Money was our senior pastor, and he approached my mother, Ginny Hunter, and Mrs. Elaine Carr to talk to them about attending a multicultural Presbyterian conference, which they did. As a result, the Multicultural Committee was formed and for many years continued to keep the congregation informed about the aspect of the church. My mother and Mrs. Carr became very active with the National Presbyterian Multicultural Committee. But as with many groups over the years and with aging leadership, the committee was not as active as it had once been. In 2012, the Multicultural Committee began planning a celebration to mark the merger's 50th year. But after that, membership dwindled and the committee all but ended. 2020 saw a resurgence in racial justice issues with the murder of George Floyd and others. Our then co-pastor, Pastor Allison, invited congregation members to gather for a racial justice task force. We began to meet in October of 2020, and over the last 3 years have met nearly every month. So what have we been doing over those last 3 years? Well, we have moved from being a task force to committee status, and that is listed in our session manual. We provided a safe place for the hard conversations as we reflect on the struggles from Black, white, and Hispanic perspectives. And there have been times of laughter and times of tears. All of our early meetings were on Zoom, but now we meet in person, which is really wonderful. It's great to get together and be able to share information face to face. We have reflected and grown in our understanding of the multiple areas that are still a struggle in our country, our church, and ourselves. And we have watched and discussed videos and used real-life situations to talk out how we might handle those situations. Remembering that the merger with Faith was not a perfect union, in June of 2022, we had a Sunday service designated as Celebrate Faith. Present congregation members from Faith, as well as some who have moved to other churches, joined us for that Sunday. The Reverend Larry Chase, an associate pastor, a former associate pastor at First Presbyterian Church at the time for the merger, returned with his son, Rick Chase, who is the former moderator of our denomination and a young boy at FPC. Rick brought the morning message that day. Warren Cooper, who is a well-known musician from Philadelphia and a son of the last Black pastor at Faith Presbyterian Church, came and shared his voice in song. Warren was a very small child when his family lived in New York. We finished this service by walking to the site of Faith for a memorial moment. And the site is actually on North Duke Street, and it's a parking lot now. Our group has helped welcome guest speakers, Todd Allen, who is the vice president at Messiah University and founder of the group Common Ground Project, an organization that offers educational civil rights trips, and Ms. Lisa McNair, who is the sister of one of the 4 little girls killed at the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. With the support of Session, we have led the movement to rename our gathering place to Faith Gathering Place, honoring Faith Presbyterian, and now, after renovations are complete, we'll hang a commissioned painting paid for by donations from church members. This beautiful painting was created by Ophelia Chambliss, is a well-known Black artist from York. And if any of you go to Harrisburg or are in Harrisburg, years ago, you would see cows all over the place. And she was the one that did those cows. Okay. Last summer, we co-sponsored a week-long Building Bridges civil rights bus trip, which I was able to go on, and it was life-changing. And we continue to seek to see how we can pursue our church's mission statement to follow Jesus everywhere, and that includes areas of racial justice. Why is it important for our church or anyone to care about racial justice? How many of you have had to talk to your teenagers who are going to be starting to drive, especially your male teenagers. You know the talk that I'm speaking of, where you tell them how they need to handle themselves if they're pulled over by a police officer, which, I mean, everyone should have that talk, but I've had to have that talk with my son for different reasons. How many of you have had to watch as a police officer snatches your son, your 12-year-old, as he's being dropped off from a church youth group because he was wearing a hoodie and he started to pull something out of his pocket, which happened to be his house keys? That's why we really need to pay attention to racial justice. And that's why I do it. And I believe that's why the people that are on the Racial Justice Committee do it. Let me end by saying that this does not come without cost and pushback. This phrase says it all. History does not repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. Our church saw pushback over racial issues many times since its inception in 1762. We actually have letters from people on our congregation from the 50th year merger that were not so, they were not pleasant to read. It's a history lesson for another time, and if anybody would like to hear about it or talk about it, we can do that. We have many resources that we could go into. In today's political and social climate, there is pushback and resistance, yet we move forward. Jesus calls us to stand firm and fight what is right. And so in York, that is what we're doing, and that's why we're here. Now, also, the Presbytery has a racial justice task force, and that is wonderful. What they're doing right now is they've trained a few of us to go out into the community to other churches who might want to start a racial justice committee, and they've trained us to go out and speak with them and help them, guide them through that process. I sit on that as a facilitator, as does my brother, Chris Hunter, and Chris actually, he said to the committee, First Presbyterian will definitely be a test church. So First Pres is the test church, one of the test churches. So folks will be coming out. We won't be doing it because it's our home church, but other people will be coming out to do that ministry. So that's what's going on. Also, the Presbytery Racial Justice Committee has committed to sponsoring another bus trip, another civil rights bus trip, which I highly recommend. If you have the chance to do it, do it. Our meetings here, our Racial Justice Committee meetings, are the second Thursday of every month. So we are more than welcoming for people. Anybody that would be interested, please let us know, or just show up. We're fine with that too. And that is that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Are there any questions for her?
Where is the Racial Justice Task Force meets second Thursday of every month?
Yes.
Where do they meet?
In the, we're going to be meeting in the faith gathering from now. At 6:30. Thank you.
We'll try to have the painting hung in Advent, but then we'll have a dedication probably early or late spring, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
What's the test?
I'm sorry.
What's the thing you were talking about where our church would be part of testing something?
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
Basically, there are churches out there that do not have a racial justice committee yet, and the Presbytery Racial Justice Committee thought that it would be a good thing to train some of us to go out into other churches to help them establish their own racial justice committee. And so that's basically what's going to be happening. So even though we have a racial justice committee here, we're still going to, there will be people still coming in and working with the congregation and working with folks that might be interested.
Okay, cool.
So.
Thanks.
Yes.
Just a fun little story, and I suppose you and Chris probably have heard some of this, but you know, your mom and Elaine went to an organization that was all African American Presbyterians for the state, for the synod, which was all Pennsylvania. And most of the black folks that came to those things were from Philly or Pittsburgh, where there's a lot of historic black Presbyterian churches. And then just a few scattered around from, I don't know, Reading or Harrisburg or something. And so our ladies, I went as a bookseller. I was the only white guy in the place sometimes because we have a lot of books on these themes. And your mom and Elaine were known in that broader network of black Presbyterians just because they came from New York. And New York's story was sort of known, and they were colorful folks and friendly to everybody. And so these big black Presbyterian churches in Philly and in Pittsburgh all knew our church and knew your mom.
Yeah.
And it was always an honor to be at those things myself. I just sat in the back and sold books, but it was always fun to be there and watch them in action.
Oh yeah, yeah. Mom would get so excited when it was time, to start getting ready to go to this.
We heard amazing speakers and stuff at those places, and it was great. Often held at Chambersburg, I think, like at Wilson College or someplace. It was good.
And also, just as knowledge, going back to the 50th or the merger. Basically, what happened with that was there was a minister that was called to help with the merger, and his name was Reverend Douglas Parks, and he was a white man, and he was young. He was pretty young at that point, and he didn't know. He wasn't sure if this was something that he was called to do. He just didn't know. So he contacted his very good friend to find out, well, what do you think? Well, his very good friend was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and he basically said, you need to do it. You need to go, and you need to unite those churches. So that's just something for your knowledge.
Jennifer, I also want to point out, once again, one thing we've talked about is the tremendous impact that the members of faith had upon this congregation as a result of the merger. We tend to think of it the other way. And your mother and Elaine are mentioned by two ordained clergy that came out of this congregation and the moderator of the Presbyterian Church USA as all saying that those two women had a profound impact upon their own spiritual formation and eventually their call to ministry. And I think we need to continue to lift that up and celebrate that the people of faith brought a tremendous sense of spirituality and a relationship to Jesus Christ that would not have been here, quite frankly, and would have not have had the impact, I believe, if they had not merged. And so I think we're constantly trying to recognize the fact that faith was a powerful witness for Jesus Christ its entire history, even to at the point in which it was struggling, but also
Yeah.
by the churches in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, because here we are, the lowly, folks from York. But God has an amazing way of working through what might be considered the weak. Reflects God's
Right.
strength and power. So I just want to thank your family. And the thing is, I don't think it's any small coincidence that your niece is delivering the message this morning.
Yeah.
Jennifer, I said to Guy too, your mom and Elaine too, what they did with teaching Sunday school, just even their presence in building what you saw in my daughter today, that really depth and knowledge of God and just that connection that's so seamless, it like comes out of her life.
Right.
You know, Elaine and your mom teaching Sunday school all those years have brought up so many good kids in this church.
Kate Barclay will testify to that. She talks about them still.
Yes, she does too.
Yep. Yes.
I just wonder this, we talked about the pushback and you explained some unpleasant stuff that we had in our history. Does the Racial Justice Task Force now sense or discern pushback now?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Like here now?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I think, my personal opinion is the pushback is worse now
In our church?
than it was when we were doing the 50th year promotion. And that was what, oh my gosh, 8 years ago, something like
But I
2012.
don't think, and Kyle, you can give us a better sense, I don't think it's a large group of people, but we're in a very toxic climate right now in our nation. And people are hearing different things and coming from it from different ways. And so you're bound to hear some of those voices. We see it as an opportunity to rise to the occasion, love those who push against us, even as those who have gone before us, because the truth of the matter is, Faith Presbyterian at the time in 65, as she already alluded to, the letters are as racist as they could be.
They're bad.
And yet the people of faith still said, we're going through with it. They could have said, we're not going in the middle of all that. They came anyway, and they loved this congregation. They loved their children. They taught them the love of Jesus Christ. And so that's an inspiration for us to say, we need to face the pushback with love of Jesus Christ and a biblical perspective, i.e., last Sunday, a biblical approach to racial justice. Does that answer your question? Okay.
I will say, Session's been 100% supportive of the
Yes.
Racial Justice Task Force, the trip, and the Racial Justice Task Force becoming a permanent committee of Session. So Session's been 100% behind it. There's never been an abstention or anything like that.
But as usual, who's the lightning rod is Kyle. And so, the session and the racial justice, we stand firmly with him as we support him. Because
Amen.
this is
Amen.
really important.
Thank you.
Yes.
As you go out into the community, as you learn to train and talk to other churches, is that just within the Presbyterian Church or any other denominations or any church in the community? All churches?
I would think that it would be any church.
Yeah.
Any.
They probably love the invitation if they were to receive it.
But no other churches are going to know about it because it's in the
No.
There's about 20 people in the presbytery at this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
I must live in a vacuum because, and maybe I heard this wrong, we're talking about pushback in our church now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure no one wants to name any names.
No.
No.
Okay, right, okay. I'm not going down that road. But, and anybody, this is kind of new to me and my wife.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't seen it or experienced it. Now, we're pretty old.
Oh, those were letters that, like, 50-some years ago, people. But the present is, well, why do we even have to have this? Why are we opening up old wounds? Why even bother having a racial justice task force?
And a room set aside for faith.
Why is there a room set aside for the Faith Presbyterian Church? Why did we have to change the name? That type of,
Why are you preaching on
yeah.
reconciliation so long?
Before communion, you always tell a story from the civil rights tour. Do people complain about that?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So the pushback, again, it seems to be against not black people per se, but the pushback is against the form of worship that we're having and what we're paying attention to.
The
Is
emphasis, what we're looking at.
And change.
But it probably descends to another level
Mm-hmm.
for
Yep.
that reason.
And the good thing is it's not a large group of people. It's not as if this is, I think there's a way in which the Racial Justice Task Force job is to go out and listen to these folks and really hear them. They might not be able to go with us, but we gotta hear them.
And Kyle, we talked this about, we have people that have joined in the last couple of years because of who we are.
That's right.
Because of the stance we're taking. This is attracting people.
And you know, when the merger happened, we lost members. I'm just going to be real honest. We did lose members because people were not happy with what was happening.
But
And
most of those were not the white members. They were faith.
Mhm.
That's where we did not do well by them.
right,
I mean, we need to make it clear that those who left were those members of faith
because
felt
they
that the
didn't,
merger
yeah,
wasn't really fully
they didn't feel comfortable. They didn't feel, yeah.
No, and not in that way. No.
I kind of get the sense that the Racial Justice Task Force is no longer asking why, they're asking how. And how do we adjust? How do we meet people where they are? How do we humble ourselves enough to bring
Mm-hmm.
community?
There was a period of time where the multicultural committee, we would have meetings and there would only be like maybe 3 of us, and that was around the time that we actually took some kids down. We took some of the youth down to Louisville. We did a trip with them to the national headquarters, and but we just did not have the membership. It resurged when Reverend Allison called for the Racial Justice Task Force and invited people, and that's when we started to see people come out. So.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you for your presentation today and for all of the work that you and the Racial Justice Committee are doing. We have a couple comments from folks online. Eve says, Jennifer, I am thinking of your mom and how pleased she would be to see her granddaughter preaching at today's service. Her work and the work of others at FPC live strong today. Thank you. And Donna says, wow, Jen, thank you for your work. And we all thank you. If you have not seen the documentary series about the history of Faith Presbyterian, I would encourage you to watch that. It is on our church YouTube channel. I believe there's also an interview with Reverend Parks still on the YouTube channel if you want to check that out. And if you're looking for a resource about why Presbyterians specifically do have to do this work, as painful as it is, in our book of confessions, the Confession of Belhar, that was written during the apartheid period in South Africa, gives a great theological justification for the importance of doing this racial reconciliation work. And that is one of our confessional documents that we are obliged to follow. And if you didn't watch Guy's lecture last week, do check that out as well. So next up, as we continue to look at another way that our church is working to promote social righteousness, I want to invite up Elizabeth Lauer, who will talk about the work of the Caring Ministry. Oh, thank you so much. Yes. It's up to whatever you prefer. Either way.
Close to your mouth.
Good morning. Can you all hear me? Okay. My name is Elizabeth Lauer, and I'm the interim director of the Caring Ministry. First of all, I'd like to begin by thanking Michelle Rich and Byron and Stephanie for asking me to speak with all of you today. And in preparing for today, I must admit I was very, very nervous. If you ever have the opportunity to stop by the Billmeyer House during our office hours and speak with me, you know or have seen how I can talk sometimes in great length about the neighbors we serve and the work we do on a daily basis. However, when I stop and think about the great ends of the church and the church's call to promote social righteousness and social justice, as Guy talked about last week, I took a pause and thought about the gravity of the topic. Then I had the opportunity to listen to Pastor Katie's sermon last Sunday, and a new spark ignited in me, because I believe that what we do at the Caring Ministry, we have the opportunity to truly follow Jesus everywhere. And as we are able to interact with our brothers and sisters in Christ, our neighbors in need of assistance, we have the chance to listen and to share God's love through the work that we do. Some of you may have had the chance to read my article in the November newsletter, but I would like to share something with you today in case you haven't read it. Over the past few weeks, I've been calling our neighbors or our clients to get some information from them in regard to what presents their children would like for Christmas. And one of those neighbors, through our discussion, she gave me the information, and then she said to me, she said, "Have you heard about the Caring Ministry's reputation, what it is in the neighborhood, or what's the word on the street?" And I admittedly paused and said, "No, I'm not sure. Could you share with me, please?" And she continued on with such confidence that what we are doing is a movement of God, that the positive, safe, secure feeling that people get when they walk into the Caring Ministry is God's love, his unending grace, his willingness to help all of our brothers and sisters in Christ. And I admittedly gave a huge sigh of relief and said, "Thank you." I said, after some of our long days where we struggle to know if we have helped someone, if we have given them not only nourishment for their body, but also their soul, it's wonderful to hear that people had that experience, that our volunteers and our staff who work with our neighbors are feeling that love, are feeling that care, are feeling that compassion that we want to bring every day to this work. So I want to share that with each of you, because some people have said to me, "We don't know what happens over there," or "We don't know what is perceived." And the fact that I can share that with you today, just it really reminds me every day that we are doing that work in our community. So I also want to talk about, just give me a second, those words from the standpoint of why I come to work each day. So why are we here to serve our brothers and sisters in Christ? And how can we make an impact when the cost of food continues to rise and the inventory can be unstable? If you have heard me talk on the side to people, we struggle with what the food banks can provide to us, what we can get from the grocery store or other local stores to provide the basic necessities to our clients. And I wonder, how can we work to give our neighbors a hand up and not a hand out? And how can we work to change those systemic issues of poverty, food insecurity, mental health, and addiction? ultimately, how can we remind ourselves and each other that God is present and faithful even in the most trying times that most of these neighbors who come to our doors at the Bill Meyer House are experiencing? I wish I could say I have the answers to all of those questions, or even some, but unfortunately, I don't. But I believe that is why our volunteers and our staff show up to work every day. As our Monday morning volunteer crew restocks the shelves for another week of client choice, we look over the food that was selected from the past week and how many products are available for this week's food appointments. On average, we have 45 to 60 scheduled food appointments in 3 days of servicing our neighbors. That's how many families are scheduled to come through our doors. And imagine this, with that many scheduled each week, we are still scheduling out until December 20th and 21st. So when someone comes to our door and asks us if they can make an appointment, they are still having to wait almost 4 weeks for that food. Our neighbors, with the help of our volunteers, when they are able to come in for an appointment, have a very nice selection of food thanks to generous donations and contributions from our church, the food banks that we partner with, and the community. We're able to give them a selection of canned fruits and vegetables, juices, canned proteins like canned pork, canned tuna, canned chicken. We give them boxes of cereal and/or pasta, frozen meat, potatoes, onions, a loaf of bread, milk, cheese, eggs, and then hopefully some special treats like snack foods or marshmallows to go with your hot chocolate on those cold days. And we also try to give some toilet paper and some toiletries, maybe a bar of soap, some hand sanitizer, shampoo and conditioner. And thanks to the many in-kind donations and monetary donations, we also are able to give feminine hygiene products and small packs of diapers to those younger neighbors. And then for those who are unsheltered or do not have a constant or reliable place to store their food, we offer emergency snack bags. We know that 4 weeks is a horribly long time to wait. We also know that if you don't have anywhere to go put your food at the end of the day, you still might have some pockets that you could store a little snack in. So if we have it on hand, we give them a sandwich, and then in their snack bag, it would be cereal bars, a bottle of water, maybe some sandwich crackers, something that you can stow away, that when that sandwich is gone and it's 9 o'clock at night and your stomach is hungry, there's still something else to partake with. For our youngest neighbors, as I said, we give the diapers, but we also have the mothers and babies, or the parent and baby's room on the second floor of the Bill Meyer House. We have clothes from newborn to 2T or 24 months. We offer diapers. We offer bath items, towels, sheets, washcloths, soap, all of those necessities that we as young parents might take for granted. It's something extra that can help offset some of the rising costs for our families. And we're also grateful that we have the opportunity sometimes to give things such as strollers or car seats or diaper bags, some of those other larger items. And if anybody has not been in there, we invite you to go up to the second floor and just see how we've transformed one room into a really nice little boutique for them to be able to look through the clothes. And then the second room, which my understanding is it was John Adams' old office, we have now turned into the shelves are used to display all of the larger items that I just talked about. So then they really feel like it provides dignity to the process. And we're not simply saying, here, here, here. You're not just another number. You are a neighbor who we're able to help, and we're able to take some time to share with you what we have to give. I also want to talk about our wonderful assistants that we have for any of those who have walked in. We have Keishla Luciano and Mitzi LaBoy. So as you might have noticed in the bulletin, Keishla is helping with our translations right now, but both she and Mitzi are bilingual, and they are a wonderful addition to helping our clients. As we all know, I don't, or maybe you don't, I don't speak Spanish, but I am so grateful for what they can provide to those clients who do only speak Spanish, and they are able to really help them understand what is caffeinated tea or decaffeinated tea or coffee, or some of those questions as we're going through the food selection and saying one item or two items or anything like that. In addition to all of that work in intaking our clients, recording the food information and scheduling their appointments, they do more. They are the conduits or the connectors between gas and electric companies and our neighbors. When we have neighbors who are $2,000, $3,000 behind on their electric or gas bill, and they might have or will soon receive a shut-off notice, Keishla and Mitzi work tirelessly but very patiently with our neighbors to go through the process that is with the utility company, take the necessary information, and then either set up a payment plan or a grant, depending on what they qualify for with Columbia Gas and Med-Ed. Furthermore, they also have the opportunity to give out bus passes for those who have received a new job. So when you get a new job, typically, as you all know, it can be 2 weeks, maybe 1 week until you get a paycheck. So our goal at the Caring Ministry is to provide 22 rides, so 2 weeks back and forth of rides that can get them to and from their job until they're able to get that paycheck. And what I'd like to talk about lastly is we've talked about food and we've talked about utilities, but now I want to talk about how we can care for the individual. That when they are coming in, it's not another number, it's not another statistic. It goes back to some of those questions that I mentioned. And we've had Wendy Smith, our spiritual director, come over, and she's had something called the resting place. And our neighbors have been able to sit and listen to them. We have a little box that we've revived with prayer requests. So our neighbors can write prayer requests, and we share those with our pastors and also our prayer group here at the church. And another thing that is exciting that we just started with Amy Brownell is we have music on Tuesdays from 12 to 1. So she comes and sits in our lobby, and she's drumming and making music. And let me tell you, for a family with 6 kids, that was the highlight of their day last week when they were home from school and their mother brought them in. The mom had the opportunity then to shop and go through our food pantry while the children were there playing music with Amy. So we're able to work with them on another level and really meet more of those needs for them. So some of you may be asking, how can I help? Well, please know, I know we are all at different stages, different seasons, different times in our lives. For some of us, it may be time. For some of us, it may be a product donation, and for others, a monetary donation. I also understand that there are different moments in our life where prayers and words of support are what we can offer. And those are so grateful. As I mentioned before at the beginning, how the words of the neighborhood resident really touched me. Just a smile, just some support, words of support can go so far in how you can rejuvenate the work that our staff and our volunteers do at the Caring Ministry. So as I was doing some online research about the church's call to promote social righteousness, I came across an article from a Presbyterian minister in California who quotes Brian McLaren in his book, The Great Spiritual Migration. And that I thought I would close today with those words. If enough of us are freed from the unbearable weight of doing everything and do the one little thing that is ours to do now, then we can trust God can get done through all of us what none of us can do alone. And suddenly, it's not burdensome work. It's aliveness. It's joy. It's freedom. Instead of playing God, I'm playing with God, at play in God's world, where everything is holy. Thank you. Question? Sorry. I should have asked that. Yes.
Just lately, it's never really happened to me, but I was glad to hear it. Met people, and then they, something comes around about church or whatever, and then they'll say, "Oh, where do you go to church?" And I'll say, First Presbyterian, and they said, "Which one or where?" And I said, "Downtown," and they said, "Oh, that's the one that really helps people." And it's like 3 or 4 times now in the last couple months that I thought, oh, it's really getting around, about the reputation and the good reputation and stuff. Made me feel good too.
Thank you. Any other questions? Uh-oh.
This won't be a hard question.
Okay, good.
You did a great job. You really covered a lot of stuff. I think there might be some folks here today that, could you touch briefly on, are we calling them shoppers now, or clients, or?
I think it's supposed to be neighbors is our current word.
Some people might like to know what ethnic, racial, countries, where they're from, what they speak.
Anyone and everyone is allowed to come. Do we have time? Okay. Oh my goodness, that's not weighted at all. Well, please know that anyone is allowed to walk into our doors and ask for assistance, and that's where we came up with those emergency snack bags, because between the wait time as well as what they're able to carry with them, we wanted to be able to standardize the process to make sure everyone receives something. In regard to John's question about I think you mean schedule the appointments, right? Or something.
One thing about ethnic, racial, what country, like, we see people from Ecuador.
Yes.
Colombia.
We have Haitian Creole, we have Spanish. Luckily, once I got there, I learned that the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank provides an interpreter. So we simply call a code, enter in a number, and that helps. But we've also learned Haitian Creole. Sometimes they speak Portuguese, and that can meet halfway with Keishla and Mitzi for Spanish. So we do. It's just wonderful that they self-declare that they are in need of food, that they need some assistance, and then we are able to provide for them.
Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth. A class member online says, "Praise God for the love of the Caring Ministry and its volunteers." And Michelle online says, "Thank you so much to both Jen and Elizabeth for sharing what good work is being done through your/our ministry. Truly, you are God's hands." So thank you so much. Next week, we will be beginning our exploration of the final great end of the church. And the last one is the exhibition of the kingdom of heaven to the world. And we have a guest speaker next week. The Reverend Aaron Anderson will be giving us an overview of that final great end of the church. You may know him as the head of the Logos Academy, or from many of the other ways that he is involved in work here in the city of York. But join us next week, and then the week after that, as we explore the exhibition of the kingdom of heaven to the world. So thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Jennifer and Elizabeth.